thinking apparatus, our emotional apparatus, and even our body apparatuses. So when we see something, we have a new experience, in the ordinary conditioned mode of consciousness, we immediately have no sense of freshness, but more of a sense of a mechanical response where well-worn emotions are called up, well-worn associations are called up, reactive processes are called to the fore, and we act according to a script that we've internalized at some point in our existence. And that represents indigestion in the sense that this vast energy that's coming into us is not allowed to be digested in a way that would naturally produce a kind of higher grade substance that might actually change the way that we experience our lives. Rather, we have the psychological or conscious experience that's very much like when you eat a very heavy Mexican food, and I know whereof I speak because I just came from New Mexico for the last week, and you consume this heavy sort of grease-laden substance, and it kind of just sits there and doesn't change, and you feel sort of heavy, and you feel kind of sluggish. And that happens not only at the physical level, but that happens at our level of consciousness. So the subject of the talk, the notion of karmic manure and the transformations thereof, speaks to this process of digestion and offers a kind of Alka-Seltzer of the mind, if you will, to help us learn how we might better metabolize these impressions and do something with this vast resource of energy that's constantly bombarding us at every moment of our lives.
I prefer pu'er.
That's true.
Rather than Alka-Seltzer. Pu'er, as you may know, happens to be the type of tea that we're drinking right now. It's the class of tea that the Chinese have traditionally used to aid in the digestion of a heavy meal, and other things as well, as something to serve in place of the hair of the dog when one has consumed a lot of alcohol, for a lot of digestive properties.
And paradoxically, to get back to the theme of our talk, pu'er is a class of tea whose processing includes a step likened unto composting.
That's right.
So back to manure.
Okay, fair enough. The process of composting is something that gardeners, of course, are familiar with. But it's not just something that happens through deliberate practice. It's also something that happens naturally through the processes of nature. We leave things behind us throughout our lives, and we leave impressions behind us throughout our lives, which are composted by the universe and turned into other substances. And one of the claims of spiritual practice is that there is a way to leave impressions behind that do not simply go through the composting process willy-nilly, that they actually can create a special, more complete form of composting. More complete in the sense that it produces effects that are intentional as they go through their process. Everything's being composted all the time, in a very real sense. Everything is transmuting into something else at all times. That's happening with our bodies on a regular basis, and that's why we have to go use the toilet several times a day, because there are processes happening in our bodies. And that same process happens when we interact with people, when we go to work and do our jobs, when we breathe air. We are transmuting substances into other substances. So the question becomes, do we have a way to do that intentionally? To provide some guidance to the direction that these products that find a home in these organisms for a time and then move on to other locations in the universe at varying rates. Is there a way to create an effective form of intentional creation of substances within our organisms, such that the effects that we leave behind us are not simply willy-nilly, are not simply the product of coincidence, apparent coincidence. Back to you. Unless we have questions at this point. So it's all pretty straightforward stuff.
Well, I'll continue the theme of digestion, and we'll probably somewhere intersect in the middle with digestion and composting. But the notion of what it means to receive an impression and to actually metabolize that impression is well worth spending some time on. So I mentioned before that what might be called psychic indigestion happens when an impression comes into us through our senses, through our senses of touch, our senses of vision, whatever, and we reactively respond to that with a pre-planned or sort of pre-programmed script. Someone says something to us, we take offense. Something happens to us, we feel angry or depressed. Maybe we feel worried, maybe we feel threatened, maybe we walk in a particular way, holding our body in a particular way. All of these are various kinds of mechanical responses to external stimuli that are coming in. So what can we do differently? Well, in our tradition, in the fourth way tradition, the tradition originally sort of brought to the West by Gurdjieff, there's a long-standing notion, which we've certainly elaborated under Robert's guidance at Tayu, that it's possible to put attention on what is coming into us in a different kind of way. And what that means is that we can be aware of the impression that's coming in, as well as simultaneously being aware of the arising internally of the reactive responses to whatever is coming into us at a given moment. So there's a kind of a dual awareness that is being suggested here. And it's not common, because most of the time, particularly when we're distracted and not paying attention and we're feeling a little bit rushed, our relationship to the outside world is sort of right at the surface. Whatever happens, we react to it. Whatever someone says, we don't contemplate, we don't let it in, we don't hold a space for it. We just kind of immediately associate to whatever the well-worn response is. And that process, which we refer to as being identified with the functioning of our organism, doesn't go any further than skin deep. We are just our sense of who we are, our sense of I is determined in that moment by whatever reaction is coming up, whether we're angry, whether we're frightened, whether someone's cut us off on the freeway and we're shaking our fists, whether we're worried about losing our jobs, whatever the particular context. But with this kind of dual attention, the recommendation is that we can be aware of both the incoming sensory information and at the same time be aware of the arising in the functioning of our organisms, of the thoughts that are coming up, the feelings that are coming up, the sensations that are arising in our body. And we can be aware of that stuff without being identified with it, without losing kind of the space between that part of us that is aware and that part which is going through its automatic functioning. And this